Imagine living in a world where laws changed at the king's whim, where justice was a privilege reserved for the wealthy and powerful, not a fundamental right for all. Where your fate could be sealed by the mere displeasure of a nobleman. This was Europe before 1804, a continent drowning in legal chaos. But then one man, an emperor, decided it was time to change everything. Not through conquest, not through violence, but through something far more powerful, the written word. This is the story of the Napoleonic Code, a legal revolution that didn't just transform France, it reshaped the entire world. Are you ready to discover how a single book of laws created the foundations of modern society? In 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte, Europe's most feared military leader, shocked the world not with cannons or swords, but with a book, the French Civil Code. At a time when most rulers were busy building armies, Napoleon was building something far more lasting, the pillars of modern society. Equality under the law, personal freedom, property rights. These ideas were so radical, so revolutionary, that they continue to echo through our courtrooms and parliaments even today. Think about it. Every time you sign a contract, buy a house, or even get married, you're experiencing the lasting impact of Napoleon's legal masterpiece. And the most fascinating part? This story involves conspiracy, betrayal, and a vision so ambitious it would outlive its creator by centuries. If you love history and want to unravel the mysteries of great empires, if you're curious about how the laws that govern your daily life came to be, then you're in for a treat. This isn't just another history lesson. This is the tale of how one book changed the course of human civilization. Before we dive deep into this fascinating journey, make sure to subscribe to Modern Age Chronicles and ring that notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single episode of our historical adventures. And here's a teaser. Wait until you hear about the secret meetings where these laws were crafted and the dramatic showdowns between Napoleon and his own legal experts. Now, are you ready to discover how a military genius became history's greatest lawmaker? Even the most powerful ruler in Europe knew he couldn't revolutionize law on his own. In the year 1800, while most of France was still catching its breath from the revolution, Napoleon Bonaparte made one of his most brilliant moves. But this time, it wasn't on the battlefield. Picture this, a dimly lit room in the Tuileries Palace, where Napoleon gathered the finest legal minds in France. Leading this extraordinary team was Jean-Jacques Régis de Cambacérès, a brilliant jurist who had survived the bloodiest days of the French Revolution. What made Cambacérès perfect for the job? He had already attempted to create a civil code 3 times during the Revolution, and though he had failed, each attempt taught him valuable lessons. You see, France at the time was a legal nightmare. In the north, they followed old Germanic customs. The south stuck to Roman law. Paris had its own rules, and don't even get me started on Brittany. Imagine trying to run a business, get married, or buy land when crossing a river meant dealing with completely different laws. It was chaos. Napoleon gave his team an impossible task: create one law book to rule them all. They worked tirelessly, often debating late into the night. Napoleon himself attended 47 of these sessions, proving he wasn't just a figurehead in this project. During these meetings, he showed a different side of himself, not the military commander, but a sharp legal mind who could argue complex points of law with the best jurists in France. The team worked for 4 years straight, combining centuries of legal tradition with revolutionary ideas. They took the best from Roman law, French customs, and revolutionary decrees. The result? 2,281 articles that would change everything. This wasn't just a law book, it was a complete blueprint for modern society. But here's the fascinating part. While they were writing these laws, they weren't just thinking about France. Napoleon had a grander vision. He wanted to create a legal system so perfect, so logical, that other nations would want to copy it. And you know what? They did. Now let me tell you about the three revolutionary ideas that shook Europe to its core. Napoleon's Code wasn't just a dusty law book. It was built on three powerful pillars that would transform society forever. First, imagine you're living in 1804. For the first time in French history, it didn't matter if you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth or if your parents were peasants. The law would treat you exactly the same. Equality before the law. What a radical concept. Nobles who had enjoyed special privileges for centuries were suddenly subject to the same rules as common merchants. This sent shockwaves through European society. Some aristocrats were so outraged they left France altogether, unable to accept that they would have to wait in line at court, just like everyone else. The second pillar was liberty, and this one was truly groundbreaking. No more secret letters ordering your arrest. No more disappearing into the Bastille without a trial. For the first time, every citizen had the right to a proper legal process. Even Napoleon's greatest enemies had to be tried in court before they could be imprisoned. Think about that. Even the emperor himself had to follow these rules. Then came the third pillar, property rights. Whether you owned a grand chateau or a tiny vegetable plot, your property was sacred and protected by law. This was revolutionary. In the old days, a noble could simply take what he wanted from peasants. Now, even the poorest farmer could stand up to the richest lord if their property rights were violated. But here comes the dark side of this story. While these principles sounded wonderful in theory, there was a glaring contradiction. Half of the population, women, were left out of this grand vision of equality and freedom. Under the code, women were basically treated as their husband's property. They couldn't own businesses, sign contracts, or even access their own money without their husband's permission. Even Napoleon, for all his forward thinking, couldn't break free from the prejudices of his time. Here's a fascinating detail most people don't know. During the debates over women's rights in the code, Napoleon personally intervened to make the rules even stricter. He once famously declared, "Nature made women our slaves." It's a reminder that even the most revolutionary documents can carry the flaws of their creators. This tension between progress and tradition, between radical change and deep-rooted prejudice, would continue to shape legal systems around the world for centuries to come. But that's not the end of our story. It's just the beginning of understanding how these principles would spread across the globe. Here's where Napoleon proved himself a true mastermind. While his military conquests would eventually crumble, his legal revolution would achieve something remarkable: peaceful world domination. This might be the greatest plot twist in legal history. Napoleon understood something profound. You can occupy a country with armies, but to truly conquer it, you need to change how people think. His civil code became the perfect tool for this. As French armies marched across Europe, they carried not just weapons, but books of law. And here's the clever part. Many countries kept these laws even after Napoleon's defeat. Let me paint you a picture of this legal conquest. Belgium adopted the code wholesale and never looked back. Italy embraced it so enthusiastically that they still call their civil law the Codex Civil. The Netherlands, Spain, Portugal, all fell under the spell of Napoleon's legal wisdom. But the code's influence didn't stop at Europe's borders. Here's a fascinating detail. In the United States, while most states follow English common law, there's one remarkable exception. Louisiana, that unique melting pot of French, Spanish, and American culture, still uses a version of the Napoleonic Code today. Imagine that. A piece of Napoleon's France alive and well in the heart of America. The code's journey across the Atlantic is even more remarkable. It shaped the legal systems of entire nations in Latin America. Brazil's civil code, created decades later, borrowed heavily from Napoleon's work. Quebec in Canada, like Louisiana, remained faithful to its French legal heritage. But perhaps the most surprising triumph was in places Napoleon never conquered. Egypt modernized its legal system based on the French model. Japan, during its rapid modernization in the 19th century, studied the code intensively. Even China's early attempts at legal reform were influenced by Napoleon's ideas. This was truly the world's first legal globalization, a revolution not by sword, but by statute. And unlike empires built on military might, this empire of ideas never fell. Here's something to think about. Every time you sign a contract, buy a house, or even get married in most countries around the world, you're following principles that Napoleon helped establish. The sun may have set on his military empire, but his legal empire, that's still very much alive. And speaking of modern impact, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What modern laws do you think might have their roots in the Napoleonic Code? Drop a comment below with your best guess. Is it property rights, contract law, marriage regulations? Share your ideas and let's uncover these historical connections together. If you're enjoying this historical journey through one of the most influential legal documents ever created, make sure to hit that like button. There's so much more to explore about how these laws shaped our modern world. Now, let's pull back the curtain on the darker side of Napoleon's legal masterpiece. For all its revolutionary ideals, the code had some deeply troubling aspects that reflected the prejudices and power dynamics of its time. One of the most heartbreaking provisions concerned children born out of wedlock. The code specifically banned paternity investigations, declaring the search for paternity is forbidden. Behind these 5 cold words lay countless human tragedies. Imagine being a child, knowing who your father was, seeing him walk down the street, but having no legal right to claim him as your parent or receive any inheritance. This wasn't just about money. It was about identity, belonging, and basic human dignity. Here's a rather ironic twist. Napoleon himself had several illegitimate children, yet he supported this harsh rule. Some historians suggest this was precisely why he favored it. The emperor, who preached equality, was quite happy to protect wealthy men, including himself, from responsibility for their actions. And then there's the matter of divorce. While the code did allow for divorce, something revolutionary for its time, the rules were heavily skewed in favor of men. A husband could divorce his wife for adultery at any time, anywhere. But a wife, she could only divorce her husband for adultery if he kept his mistress in their marital home. Talk about a double standard. Let me share a lesser-known fact. During the debates over these provisions, there was significant pushback from some of the code's authors. Jean-Étienne-Marie Portalis, one of the principal drafters, actually argued for more equitable treatment of women and children, but Napoleon personally intervened, insisting on these restrictive measures. The code also maintained strict paternal authority within families. Fathers had almost absolute power over their children until they reached adulthood, and husbands held similar authority over their wives. A married woman couldn't work, sign contracts, or even access her own bank account without her husband's permission. These limitations reveal something crucial about legal progress. It often comes in fits and starts, carrying forward both revolutionary ideas and old prejudices. Napoleon, the great liberator who promised equality before the law, was still very much a man of his time, unable or unwilling to extend true equality to all. Many of these restrictive provisions would remain in place for decades, some even for over a century, affecting millions of lives across the globe. It wasn't until the 20th century that most countries using the Napoleonic Code began to reform these more problematic aspects. Here's something that would have shocked Napoleon himself. His code outlived not just his empire, but went on to shape the modern world in ways he never could have imagined. While his military conquests crumbled into dust, his legal masterpiece kept marching forward through time, crossing borders and cultures he never dreamed of reaching. Let me share something truly fascinating. In 1867, decades after Napoleon's death, Egypt decided to modernize its legal system. Now, You might think an Islamic nation would look to Islamic law or perhaps British common law. But no, they chose to adapt the Napoleonic Code. They took this French legal framework and brilliantly merged it with Islamic principles, creating something entirely new. Today, much of the Middle East and North Africa still uses legal systems based on this remarkable fusion. But wait, it gets even better. Have you ever wondered where copyright laws came from? Those little C symbols you see everywhere. Well, here's a plot twist. The modern concept of intellectual property rights traces its roots back to Napoleon's Code. For the first time in history, the law recognized that ideas and creative works deserved legal protection just like physical property. Without realizing it, Napoleon had laid the groundwork for everything from Hollywood studios to tech startups. Think about this. When Mark Zuckerberg defends Facebook's intellectual property, or when Disney protects Mickey Mouse, they're using legal principles that started with a French emperor who never saw a computer or a motion picture. Now that's what I call staying power. The Code's influence on modern capitalism goes even deeper. Those contracts you sign, the way companies are structured, the rules for buying and selling property. Napoleon's Code established the legal framework that makes modern business possible. He created a system so logical, so practical, that it became the foundation of commercial law across much of the world. Here's an ironic twist of history. Napoleon, who spent most of his life fighting British power, ended up creating legal tools that would help make modern capitalism, a system often associated with Anglo-American influence, possible. The emperor, who wanted to destroy British commerce, actually helped build the global economic system we know today. And perhaps most remarkably, the Code keeps evolving. In the 21st century, countries are still using its basic framework to tackle completely new challenges. From digital rights to environmental protection, Napoleon's legal principles are being adapted to solve problems he could never have imagined. So next time someone tells you Napoleon was just a military conqueror, remind them of this. While his empire lasted barely a decade, his real conquest, his legal code, is still governing lives, protecting rights and shaping society more than 2 centuries later. Not bad for a book of laws written by candlelight in the early 1800s. What do you think about this incredible legacy? How many aspects of your daily life might be influenced by this 200-year-old legal code? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, sometimes the most powerful revolutions aren't fought with swords and cannons, but with ideas and laws that stand the test of time. As we reach the end of our journey through this remarkable chapter of history, let's consider something profound. While Napoleon's cannons eventually fell silent, his ideas continue to echo through the corridors of justice around the world. The Napoleonic Code teaches us an extraordinary lesson, that the pen truly can be mightier than the sword. Think about it. Armies can conquer territories, but ideas conquer minds and hearts. Napoleon's empire crumbled, but his legal legacy shaped democracies from Brazil to Japan. His military victories are now just pages in history books, but his laws still govern how millions of people buy homes, sign contracts, and seek justice. But here's the question that keeps legal scholars awake at night. Can any legal system truly be perfect? The Code shows us both the power and the limitations of human-made laws. It gave us equality before the law while denying basic rights to women. It protected property rights while turning a blind eye to children born out of wedlock. Perhaps this is the Code's greatest lesson, that justice, like the people who create it, is always a work in progress, reflecting both our highest ideals and our deepest prejudices. Napoleon once said, "My true glory is not the 40 battles I won. My true glory is the civil code." 2 centuries later, history has proven him right. While his military empire lasted just a decade, his legal empire continues to shape our world. Before we part ways, I have a challenge for you. Look around your daily life and try to spot the invisible influence of the Napoleonic Code. Maybe it's in your rental agreement, your marriage certificate, or even in the copyright notice on your favorite book. Share your discoveries in the comments below. You might be surprised by how much of your life is touched by this 200-year-old legal revolution. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's most influential documents, make sure to hit that like button and share this video with your history-loving friends. Subscribe to Modern Age Chronicles and ring that notification bell. You won't want to miss our next episode. Until next time, remember, the most powerful revolutions aren't always won with swords and gunpowder. Sometimes they're won with ideas that change how we think about justice, equality, and human rights. See you in our next historical adventure.